Hey everyone, welcome to Make Do Tell Story Episode 5. This is part of the Kansas City Public Library's Make Do Tell series, and this is storytelling. So this is where you have come to learn a new story that you can then tell to other people. All right, so this week I'm going to go over some of the things that I have probably talked about in the last few episodes, and if I haven't, I should have. Just about how stories work. So I'm going to start with that, and then I'm going to talk to you about storyboarding because it ties in with how stories work. All right, so stories are basically images. That's how they work. They're a sequence of images that start in my head, and then whoever might be listening to me, they trigger images in their head. Now, my images that I see in my head may not be the same images that anybody else sees in their head. It would be really weird if it was. But what it does is I see the image, and my ability to see the image and then convey it sets up a whole stream of images happening in the head of the listener. It's kind of a weird thing. But if I were to ask you, if I were talking about this house in the forest, and I would ask each one of you what that house looked like, it would look nothing like the house that I see in the forest, and it wouldn't look like anybody else's house, most likely. Elements, yeah, but the whole thing, nah. You have it in your head, but my telling you puts it there. It's very odd, but I like it. I like the idea of it. Now, so images, stories are not made of words, they're made of images. Words are one way to create the images. When you're telling stories, you also have things like your hands, which are flying around and hopefully telling you something real and not just something because they're nervous or whatever. If I'm opening a door, and it makes sense. Not I'm opening a door. Sometimes my hands do that. So beware. Don't let your hands do that if you're opening a door. Everyone knows what opening a door looks like. So they know when you don't have it right. And it may distract them from the story, even though your words are telling them one other thing. All right, so that's what I wanted you to think about with images. They're made up of, they're created using words, they're created using facial expressions, hand gestures, your whole body. They're created with pauses. And sometimes those pauses can be real uncomfortable. And sometimes they make the story work just perfectly, even if they are uncomfortable. So it could be tone of voice. It could be different characters. It could be like me talking to the character who's over here, and then that character talking to me who's over here. All of these things help create the story and the image and the whole experience of a story. So know that. And now on to our story. This week's story is The Freedom Bird. And let's see, I got it from this book, which you may recognize because Lazy Jack also came from this book. This is Ready to Tell Tales, in case it's backwards on your screen. It is edited by David Holt and David Holt and Bill Mooney. They edited all these stories. All these stories were given by storytellers, famous storytellers, and they are available for you and me to use. When the library opens back up, we have a copy of this that you can check out. You can put it on hold and you can get it that way. But what I love about this story today is it's also available online. David Holt is the one who offered this story up. And he got it when he was in Thailand. He was doing a musical tour, and there was a kid who told him this story. As part of his tour, he heard this story, and I assume he loved it, because if he didn't, he wouldn't have learned how to tell it, and he wouldn't have put it in this book. Because as we know now, as experienced storytellers, you gotta love a story because you're gonna be spending some time with it. So David Holt loved the story, shared it with the world. Yay. And now I'm sharing it with you in case you didn't hear it from David. But there is a link, which I will include about how to find it, David's story. Also, you may know Bill Harley. He is a musician and a storyteller, and he does a version of this. And it was really fun to find that on the internet today when I was just looking to see what I could give you to help you move your storytelling forward. His rendition is really nice because he's a singer. I'm going to sing for you, but it's not going to be pretty necessarily. But his is. And what was cool about it is there's a little snip of a song in there that that sounds different in Thailand than it does here in the United States, or at least when I was a kid, we used to say this all the time. It was a nice taunt. Na 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 na. I don't know if you ever did that to your brother or sister. I don't know if kids are still doing it or not, but it was really effective at irritating our brothers and sisters when we were young. Sounds a little different in Thailand, and I got to hear what that sounds like. I played piano when I was a kid, not well, but I did. I also played the trombone, which was a lot of fun. And so I learned how to read music, but it doesn't mean my voice can do that. I could pick it out on the piano, but I don't have one anymore. So, so you can go and listen to Bill Harley, get the notes right. I'll try it and we'll see how close I get. But I can do na 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 because I know that from when I was a kid. All right, so the freedom bird. Once there was a hunter, and he went out into the woods every day because that's what he did. And he would hunt for things to eat that he could bring back and share with his family or just for himself, depending on if his family was around or not at the time. So this one day he went wandering into the woods and he found nothing. And so he went further and further into the woods, and still there was nothing that he could shoot and take home for his supper. And so he kept trekking further. And finally, he was so far back in the woods, he'd never been there before. And it was then that he heard this strange, awful, awful sound, like really awful on his ears. And so he had to know what it was. You may know about things like that. It's like, oh, what is that terrible sound? Or what is that terrible smell? So you go and figure it out. That's exactly what he did. And when he got to this huge tree, he looked up because that's where the sound was coming from. And he looked up, and there, way up high, at the very top of the tree, there was the most beautiful golden bird that he had ever seen. And then it opens its mouth, and there came that sound. You can do it with me. Na 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 na. He said. He looked up at that bird. He said, if you don't stop that sound, that terrible sound, I'm going to shoot you, because he had his bow and arrow with him. And the bird just looked down at him and said, as birds are wont to do, na 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 na. And so the hunter was not one to mince words. He pulled an arrow out of the quiver on his back. He pulled the bow off his shoulder. He notched that arrow back as far as it would go, and he let it fly. And the bird saw it coming, and it just stepped over to the side, and it said, na 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 na. Well, that made the hunter really mad. So he pulled another arrow out of his thing. He put it on, he knocked it on the string of his bow, pulled it back, and let it fly. And the bird saw it coming, and it just stepped over to the other side. And the arrow went flying. Well, now the bird looked down and said, na 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 na. The hunter is really mad now. He pulls out a third arrow, knocks it on his string, pulls back that string as tight as far as he can. That arrow shot, and this time it went right through the heart of the bird. And the bird began to fall. Well, the hunter grabbed his hunting bag and he opened it up, and he went and he stood right under that tree, and he caught it, the bird, with the arrow in its heart, and he tied it up, and he threw it over his shoulder because now he had his dinner, and it was getting late because he'd had to walk so far. So he trudged on home with that bird in the sack over his shoulder. And he hadn't gone more than 100 steps when he heard, no. He pulled that thing out, he's like, ooh. And it made him walk really fast. He got home. He pulled that bird out. He pulled the arrow out of the bird and he set that bird on his butcher block table. And he began to pluck that bird. And when he turned around to grab the pot to fill up with water for his soup, bird soup, he heard, because that bird was shivering. It was so cold without its feathers. Oh, that made him swirl around. He turned around so fast. And so he turned back around. He grabbed his knife and he began to chop. And he chopped and he chopped and he chopped, chop, 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 until that bird was in 100 pieces. He filled up his pot with water. He scraped all the pieces of that bird into the water and he put it on the stove, turned on the stove, lit a match, and the heat began to make that water boil. And it was then that he heard, he was so mad he grabbed that pot up and he went outside, he set it down, he grabbed his shovel and he began to dig a hole. And that's not how you dig. He dug and he dug and he dug and he dug until that hole was up to his chest high. And he climbed up out of that hole. He grabbed that pot and he threw it down. All of it. He kept the pot. He turned it over, dumped it out. The water and the bird went down into that hole. And he began to take the dirt he dug out and throw it down on top. And when he got done, he heard, you know, the thing about being so mad was it made him dig really fast. He dug that thing back out. He went out to his shed and he found this really beautiful box that he had just finished crafting. And he took that box back, grabbed all the pieces of that bird, and he put it in the box. And then he put a stone on top of that, tied it down as tight as he could, secure. That stone wasn't moving anywhere. He took that whole box with the stone. He walked down to the river that was nearby his house and he splash threw that box into the river. And he watched as it began to sink. And he heard boom, 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 boom. Again. But then it was out of his sight and he knew it wasn't going to just come back up and come back to his house. So he turned around and he went home. Well, a big storm came up that night and that river was rocking and rolling all the way down to the bottom where that box and that stone had settled. And it was rough. It tumbled it along with all those other rocks in the river, and it wasn't long before those ropes were loose and frayed, and that stone dropped away, and the ropes dropped away too, and that box floated back to the surface and floated downstream. And it floated, and about 3 days later, there were about 5 kids playing there on the riverbank. And one of them looked out and saw the box and was like, I wonder what that is. It looks kind of fancy, not just like a stick of wood. I'm going to go out there and get it. And so he was a really good swimmer, so he swam out until he grabbed the box, placed it on his chest, and he swam back. And he was a little bit down the stream by then. He was a strong swimmer, but it was still a pretty fast river at that point. So all the kids ran down the side of the stream until they got all at the same place at the same time. And they opened that box up Soon as he lifted the lid, 100 golden birds flew up into the sky and disappeared. Well, about a year passed, and our hunter was back in the woods, and again, he had trouble finding something close by in his usual hunting grounds. And so he walked deeper in the forest, and it wasn't long until he was kind of near where that tree was, where he had first seen that bird. And guess what he heard? Na 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 na, kind of loud. Oh, he was so mad, he went stomping straight to that tree. And when he looked up this time, he saw 100 golden birds. Oh, he said to himself, I know what you are. You're the freedom bird. And everybody knows that you can't kill freedom. And anytime you try, it just gets stronger. And that is the story of the freedom bird. I hope you liked it. And I hope that you'll learn it and start to tell it to other people. And remember that we get good at telling stories by telling stories. Okay? And you have to be willing to be kind of bad at it at first. So embrace that. Go in there, tell it like with gusto. Tell it exuberantly. Tell it however it comes out until it becomes your story. And until you get so good at it that you spread the story everywhere. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about this. This is a very poorly drawn, and I even used, I used a book because I didn't have a ruler. So I just used a book and I did a terrible job, but I made a grid. This is a 12 grid storyboard. So what I would do is I figured out that there are 12 scenes to the story, at least in my mind. There is the hunter in the forest first. You see that. And then you see the bird up in the tree and the hunter down underneath. And then the hunter shoots the bird. And then the hunter takes the bird home. And then the hunter puts the bird in the pot. And every step of this story, you hear, na 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 na. I told you I was going to sing it the way they sing it in Thailand, but I can't remember it now. But go listen to Bill Harley's and you'll get it. Or use mine, or use your own version. If you don't know na 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 na, like from when I was a kid, you could just be like, nah, 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 nah. That's annoying. You can do it however you want. But if you want to make it sound like they do in Thailand, go listen to it. Decide if you like it. Decide if you want to use it. Decide if you like how I did it. Decide if you want to use that. Decide if you want to make up your own. It's all good. Okay, so takes the bird home. Scene 5, chops the bird up. And every time it does, it makes a different sound. So just based on what's going on. Then he puts the bird in the pot. And then he puts the bird, buries it in the hole in the ground. Then he digs it back up, puts it in a box that he throws into the river. And then it goes floating down the river and the children find it. They open it, the birds fly free. That was 2. Children find the box, the 100 birds fly free. Scene 11, the hunter is back in the forest and here's the bird again. And then scene 12, he sees the birds and he realizes that it's the freedom bird. So boom, 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 12. You can do it that. If you like to draw bigger on the back, I did it so it's 6, and you could do 2 of these so you have more room. You could do 1 for each scene if you really like to draw really big, and then you would have 12 sheets of paper. It's up to you. The point is, stories happen in images. So you're drawing images. It's not about the words. It's about the images. And then you just follow the sequence of images. And one sequence leads to the next. And so it's just scene, 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 scene. First scene, second scene, third scene, fourth scene, all the way through the 12th scene, or however many scenes that you picture, but you picture it in your head. This helps you do that. I am also not a great artist, but if you want to see a great artist, come back tomorrow to this same channel and you will see Samantha, who will teach you how to draw comics. And then you can make really nice storyboards, but you don't need to. Stick figures work. Trust me, I know. All right. So that's what we have for today. I think I got it all. I have a little notepad just as a rememory. Remember, when you are remembering stories, you are not memorizing stories. You are just remembering the flow of scene to scene to scene. That's it for today. Remember, you can come and watch Samantha teach you how to draw comics tomorrow. You can make a comic of this story, and then you will have your own sequence, your own storyboard ready to roll. You can then tell from that. And then come back on Thursday, and Kaisha will be doing a new project, STEAM related, making stuff from stuff that you probably have around your house. Thanks for tuning in. The Kansas City Public Library is delighted to be able to give you things to do while you're stuck at home. And this is one of them. All right, that's it for today. Have a great day. Hope to see you again next week. Bye now. Oops, I forgot again. This is the part I always forget. I'm Jamie. Maybe next week I'll remember to tell you that at the beginning. Don't count on it. All right, have a great week.